المتحدث العالمي باسم منظمة اليونيسف جيمس ألدر، أهلا بك في لإرم نيوز. في البداية لنتحدث عما جرى في رفح. الجميع وكل العالم شاهد الصور المؤلمة من هناك. ماذا يمكن أن تقول وكيف تصف الأوضاع الإنسانية؟
Rafah now is enduring what everyone feared. All the threats and all the promises that they would not see this sustained military offensive in the one place people were told to go. Remembering, and we have to keep remembering, that these are families from across Gaza who invariably had their homes destroyed. Quite a lot of them lost a family member, had a mother, a sister, a son killed, and they moved to Rafah, physically exhausted, psychologically battered, no chance to try to start to recover from the loss of a loved one or of a home, everything they built, living in a tent. And these tents are side by side with a criminal lack of sanitation, of water, of food, of the basic protection and medicines that there is a legal responsibility to provide. They have lacking all of these. And then there are these attacks, more attacks, dozens of attacks. Yes, the world is focused on one particular terrifying attack that led to this inferno, literally hell on earth for these people. But there have been many, many attacks, and it's ongoing. So I think we now talk of up to 1 million people from Rafah. Rafah, this city of children, now 1 million people have had to move again. And we see them, and I speak to those people, and they are shattered, they're exhausted. And rightly, the thing we hear the most frequently from them is, we don't know where to go. How could they possibly know where to go? They move multiple times. They end up in Rafah, in these so-called safe zones, this dangerous narrative of a safe zone. They end up in Rafah to be bombed, to be moved again, to move to some dusty outcrop in Al-Mawassi that has even less sanitation and health services and food than they did in Rafah. That's what's happening.
سيد ألدر، كنت ذكرت مؤخرا أن الأسوأ لم يأتي بعد وقد كنت وقتها في رفح. برأيك متى يمكن أن يتوقف كل ذلك؟ إلى متى سيستمر؟
As much as it pains me to say, when we talk of the worst is yet to come, it's because people's coping capacities are exhausted. The Rafah crossing, the humanitarian lifeline is closed. The bombs continue. So for those long-suffering mothers and children and civilians on the ground in Gaza, it's only getting worse, and it will continue to get worse until some sense, some sanity, some decency prevails and we get a ceasefire.
سيد ألدر، منظمة اليونيسف ذكرت أن هناك 600 ألف طفل بينهم 80 ألف رضيع يتواجدون في رفح وليس لهم مكان آمن يذهبون إليه. بعد كل ما شاهده العالم من صور مؤلمة، ماذا حل بهؤلاء الأطفال وهؤلاء المدنيين؟
Short answer, we just don't know. We don't know. There's been a mass outflux. Some people are moving to this area, Al-Mawassi. Some people are just moving a few hundred yards, trying to get away from the attacks. But as you rightly say, and as UNICEF has said now for weeks, there is a large portion of children who can't move. I've sat in tents with children who've had amputations, who should be getting the best of Palestinian healthcare. But hospitals are overcrowded, hospitals have been systematically destroyed. So these children who still need medical care, certainly they need psychological care, are in tents, and now they're being pushed to move. So the horrifying short answer as to what is the situation of those children who are malnourished or who have existing disabilities or who have wounds of war, we don't simply know.
نعم سيد ألدر، هل لديكم إحصاءات كمنظمة يونيسف أممية؟ هل لديكم إحصاءات معينة بشأن عدد الضحايا، عدد الجرحى، عدد النازحين؟ وهنا أقصد أو أتحدث عن الفترة والأيام الأخيرة.
No, I think every day has been hellish in Gaza. If we're now at the reports of 14,000, 15,000 girls and boys killed, then on an average across 8 months of this, we're looking at 50, 60 children a day. I don't know what has been most recently in Rafah. Of course, we've seen the scenes. We've seen that horrendous fire, that inferno. We know that there's been 50 or 60, maybe more airstrikes since the International Court of Justice asked that no more attacks continue, 50 or 60. So it does become difficult after a while to try to explain what those people are enduring. I think the thing that is hitting me hardest right now and humanitarian workers is when we talk to those people who we know on the ground, Palestinian families, they are for the first time talking about hope being extinguished. I've had many mothers say to me, you know, I've lost the ability to feed my child, to keep my child safe. I've lost my job, I've lost my home. Hope is all we have. But that was months ago. Now I'm talking to people who are saying it's really difficult because my mother was this beacon of hope. She was always this positive force. And now she's, you know, depressed and sad, and she doesn't have that sense of sharing hope anymore. And you can understand why. People are in an automatic mode, of pure survival mode. But they are trying to survive denial of water, food and medicine on the ground, and a bombardment from the sky. And of course, as we're seeing, thousands and thousands are not surviving.
إذا ما أردنا أن نتحدث عن مسألة تقديم المساعدات، هل المنظمات الدولية وأنتم قادرون اليوم على الاستمرار في عملكم وعلى إيصال المساعدات إلى كل هؤلاء النازحين والمقيمين في هذه المخيمات؟
Yeah, it's a great question when it comes to supplying aid. Now, we cannot for a moment pretend that the people of Gaza are getting the sort of aid, the quantity of aid that they need. And we must be clear here. Israel, as the occupying power, has a legal responsibility not just to enable that aid, but actually to provide it. So, okay, the provision of aid is happening through the United Nations, but the operating space is horrendous. We've seen many aid workers killed. We've seen consistent denials and blockages and restrictions. Now we see the Rafah crossing, the lifeline for humanitarian aid. And when I say humanitarian aid, I mean medicines and anesthetics for hospitals. I mean fuel for the desalination plants so they can pump water, and so hospitals, so surgeons can operate with light. I mean tents for people. I mean nutritional food for the most severely malnourished children. Absolute life-saving aid. A fraction of what is required is getting in. A fraction.
سيد ألدر، أود فقط أن أسألك عن موقف واشنطن. واشنطن ذكرت أن الهجوم الإسرائيلي الأخير لم يتجاوز الخطوط الحمراء. كيف يمكن أن تعلق على ذلك الموقف اليوم؟
We cannot drift into the political sphere. What we do know is that there remain those with power and those with influence who can push for a ceasefire on all sides of this war. And that is so overdue. I was in Gaza in March when the Security Council finally voted for that ceasefire. I saw the look in so many mothers and children that we might get a night, as one mother said, I might have a night now where I can promise my child they will definitely wake up tomorrow morning, no bombs. But that hope was extinguished, was literally blown away by bombardments in the very few hours after that. So whatever political discourse is going on right now, the reality is that decisions are not being made that people on the ground require. And that's a ceasefire, that's hostages home, and that is getting so much aid across the Gaza Strip so that we can prevent the famine which is on the doorstep.
سيد ألدر، إذا أردت اليوم أن توجه نداء أو دعوة للمجتمع الدولي من أجل الضغط والعمل على إنهاء هذه الحرب بشكل سريع وفوري، ماذا تقول للمجتمع الدولي عبر لإرم نيوز؟
I think we've seen, if there's any hope here, we've seen such a change in the last few months in terms of people around the world, whether it's from the Antipodes, whether it's from Australia or from the Arab world or North America or Latin America. We have seen voices consistently now raised, particularly from a young population, that this has to stop, that this is enough. And there seems to be growing solidarity around the world for the people of Gaza. But the decision-making power, the power to actually stop the bombs, is held by just a few. And that's where we keep lobbying. That's where we keep raising our voice. But we are a humanitarian organization. And so we will have to keep literally stemming the bleeding. But this is Band-Aids on bleeding right now. This is plasters on bleeding. The only way to end the misery that's happening right now for children and families in Gaza, the only way is for those with the decision-making power to end this. And that's where at the highest levels, the Secretary General, the Executive Director of UNICEF have been pleading for this, imploring for this for months. And we just keep doing it.
جيمس ألدر المتحدث العالمي باسم منظمة اليونيسف، شكرا جزيلا لك على هذا اللقاء.
It's a pleasure. Nice to connect.